Welcome to Arts and Entertainment.
With Chris and Randall.
I'm Chris.
I'm Randall.
And welcome to our show. That's an interesting thing that's been going on. The show's called Arts and Entertainment, and we've not really ever done a show. It's always a subset. This is a form of art, or this is a form of entertainment. But today is going to be the most unique umbrella show because we're going to cover pretty much a lot of what falls into arts and entertainment. This was recorded in 2020, and it was recorded after March of 2020. And for the first time in most of our lives, if you're watching this around the same period this is being recorded, live in-person entertainment just does not exist. It's been taken out of our lives. And you know how they say, Randall, you never miss something until it's gone?
Yes, I've heard that.
I miss it, and I miss it hard. And I miss it so much that it's really gotten me to think about what makes the live in-person experience so different, unique, fascinating. Why is it so compelling? Why is it so defining? Why does it speak to people in general and you and me personally? And congratulations, folks. That's what we're going to explore today on this show, the live in-person experience as it relates to arts and entertainment. So right off the bat, let me just say, Randall, I know you're a giant football fan. And everybody knows I love me some baseball and ice hockey. We're lying.
I'm not a big sports fan.
We're not going to cover sports in this story, even though a lot of what we say can also overlap with going to a sporting event. And I have been to have you ever been to a sporting event?
Yes, I have. I've been to Dodgers games, and when I was at USC, I went to one football game.
Right. So I have been in these arenas, normally to catch concerts, but occasionally to see the athletic persons with the balls and the uniforms doing the score-like things. But unfortunately, I think a lot of people would say outside of professional wrestling, sports is not really entertainment. Sports sports is competition.
Right. Let's make that conceit and just say we're not talking about sporting competitions on this episode. We're just going to just assume that for the sake of this discussion that they're not art. Although we can have that discussion at some point in the future.
Or entertainment.
That's right.
Admittedly, you know, we respect it. And again, a lot of what we're going to say today is going to overlap with that experience. And some of it is not, because there's something very unique about sports as well. So anyway, I just want to acknowledge that, because I know when you see Chris, you see this show, you're thinking, man, they're gonna talk about sports because we're the sports guys. Well, imagine if we were an ESPN show and I'm like, hello, I'm Chris Gorbell, and here's with me is Randall Mills, and we're talking sports.
Maybe we should do a show like that.
Yeah, we should just on April Fools. Wow, we are really spending way too much time on.
We weren't even gonna. I didn't even know you were gonna talk about this. Let's get to the actual show.
The show. I just want to say, please like our show, because clearly, as you can tell, we are very emotionally insecure people who need your approval. Please subscribe to our show, because otherwise, you're not going to know when we have a new episode. Honestly, you may not even know if we have a new episode if you subscribe, because of the different ways that they don't do notification. But we do come out normally once a week, every Thursday. So check back.
Just subscribe to the podcast on a podcasting service or on YouTube.
Yeah, but if not,
or like the page on Facebook. Either any one of those ways, you'll get notified.
Exactly, and Thursday is our day. And again, if we say anything today that you thought was awesome, or we overlooked a point, or you think we are just full of shit, please comment. Get to us. How can they get to us, Randall?
Well, Facebook, our Facebook page, you can communicate with us. You can leave a message right on our website. You can send us an email. Yeah, go to our website and see all the various ways you could contact us. Check it out.
Yeah, I mean, did you notice that you did get a comment on the show we just recorded about
From your girlfriend?
yes, my girlfriend talking about you being on a Radiohead video. See?
Yeah, we
People
talked
are
about.
watching.
I was in a radio video. Yes. Okay.
Radiohead video, which is good because speaking of Radiohead, that is a band, and besides being on video, they perform live, and that takes us to our show. So I just want to start from the beginning and ask you, Randall, as a child, do you remember the earliest live shows that you went to?
Yeah, I didn't know you were gonna ask me this question. But yeah, my mother took us kids all to a Michael Jackson concert. Me and my brother and my sister. It was probably. I think it could have been the first concert I ever went to.
Oh my God.
My mother's a
So-
big Michael Jackson fan.
That's so wild knowing your mom. Not that your mom's, it's just because you never think. So roughly what year would that have been?
Wow, it could have been. It was in the '80s somewhere.
So was that like Thriller? You would have been like 9?
I think it was a little bit after Thriller. I think it was during the bad years.
Oh yeah, that's 84. So that's pretty freaking awesome. So you had Bad and you had Thriller and
It was giant. I mean, it was a massive concert. It was amazing.
what theater did you go to?
I think it was in Orange County, or it could have been Irvine.
Oh, I've been to the Irvine. Yeah, I know which one you're talking about.
It could be the Irvine place that's not there anymore. What is it?
Yeah,
The Irvine Amphitheatre?
Irvine Amphitheatre, I believe it was called. Yeah.
Yeah, it was. I mean, that place was huge, right?
It was outdoors, right?
That's right.
So, wow. And Michael Jackson, he lived not too far away. So it's like he leaves his house in Encino and he performs. And
Yeah, the stage was full of people the whole show. I mean, you wouldn't think that with Michael Jackson, but yeah, he filled the stage with people. It was amazing.
so you would have been, what, 9 years old?
Yeah, I was probably around then.
And
9,
you were
10.
there with your sister and your
My
mom.
brother, my mom, right, and Michael Jackson. I think my mom had brought binoculars. We were so far in the back.
Did you feel like you were far in the back, or did you just feel like, wow, this is crazy?
Oh yeah, I felt like I was far, far away, and I mean, see, you love live shows more than I do, but yeah, I mean,
we'll get to me in a moment. But like was it?
Well,
what
for
did
me,
it
it's
feel
just
like?
I felt like this is interesting. I mean, I can't even see the show without binoculars. I mean, this is way before the giant video screens too, So, I mean, if you go to a concert today and you sit way in the back and you see the giant video screens, just imagine if those giant video screens weren't there. I mean, that's how it used to be, right?
But you are familiar with the music, I'm assuming.
Oh yeah, back in those days, everybody knew every Michael Jackson song. I mean, they were played constantly on the radio.
Was it exciting to like hear those songs live?
Well, I mean, as a little kid, I didn't understand live performance. Like, I understood watching stuff on TV and enjoying things on TV and listening to it on the radio. But I really, even to this day, I don't understand like why you'd want to go see somebody live. I mean, maybe I'm crazy, Chris.
All right. Well, thank you so much for watching, everybody. That was our show. That was it. All right, Randall. Thank you. Okay, that was enjoy our 6-minute episode of Chris and Randall. All right. Well,
and I wasn't a big Michael Jackson fan either. I mean,
maybe at that age it was a good thing you weren't. Otherwise, you'd go backstage and we'd have a completely different episode.
You know what? I never thought of that, Chris. But I mean, maybe if I had been a better looking kid, I mean, I could have had a whole different life.
Well, anyway, my point is, I think the first live performance I ever remember as a kid was going with my mom, and then I think also with my grandparents. It's terrible to say this, but because I was so young, I remember being with my sister. I cannot remember if I was with my mom or my grandparents on my mother's side or my grandparents on my father's side, or maybe I just went so often. But when I was a kid, Ringling Brothers and Barnum Bailey Circus would rent out Madison Square Garden, and we would see the circus. And come on, that's pretty freaking amazing, isn't it?
Yeah, my grandfather took us to the circus here in California. I think it was Barnum and Bailey. It was the same circus.
Yeah.
And Yeah, I mean, I enjoyed it as a kid. I mean, I think I really like the clowns more than anything.
You know what? I was scared of the clowns. It's the weirdest thing. My mom likes to point out that I could watch the trapeze artists, guys getting shot out of a cannon, like the most death-defying things possible. And I was fascinated. But a clown, I don't know why, that scared me as a kid.
You know, the circus, people probably don't, kids today wouldn't understand, but the circus today, or the circus had like 3 rings, right? And so
Yeah.
each ring was like a stage where a different show was going on, right? Simultaneously. So it was kind of like sensory overload. You'd sit in the audience, you could watch 3 shows at once.
Yeah.
And
it'd be a funny show and a death-defying show. And then what I want to call from the child's mind, a what the fuck show. You know, like, how did all those clowns fit into this small car? You know, or how does this lion disappear? You know, like there was magic, there was illusion.
Yeah. I'm surprised that you didn't like the clowns. You know, I honestly, the clowns was my favorite part of the show. I loved them.
I think I found the clown scary. Which, if you read any Stephen King, apparently I'm not alone.
And I guess, getting back to our topic, one of the great things about the circus, right, was seeing these people do these amazing things live, right? I mean, it was there was no tricks. I mean, the acrobats are really acrobats. I mean, they had to train. There was a net sometimes. Sometimes they would take the net away, right? There would be a moment in the show where they'd say, this guy is going to do it without the net tonight.
the thing that to this day really amazed me is just when they take the fire and they would just swallow, you know, the fire.
Right.
And like, you know, it's real fire. And I always remember,
because you could see it, you could feel it. It's right in front of you.
Always remember my grandparents telling me, you can't do that. You know, do that. Don't try this at home. Like, do not. You know, a couple of years ago, I met a sword swallower in real life. And she told me that she had to train like every single day. She has to practice controlling her muscles in her stomach to get that sword down her throat and back up. And she said, you know, which, like, who are these people? You know, like, I know that's the most Seinfeld thing you said, but the circus, I honestly, pardon the pun, but I always felt that the circus set the stage for expectations of what you could get in a live performance. Like, because at the circus, you would see tigers, you know, you would see lions, you would see elephants, live elephants. So like, you would see beautiful women, you know, if you like guys, beautiful guys. So like everything that I would come to expect short of music. No, because weren't there bands also? Didn't they play music live at the circus?
I think the clowns played music.
The clowns did, and there's just musical accompaniment.
Yeah, there was an organ sometimes. Like
yeah. And there's just drums before they do anything important.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
I would almost argue the circus is our primer.
Well, the circus was the real first mass market live entertainment, right? I mean, there were always like little traveling troops, but the circus was like a real, I mean, they used the railroad and they traveled around and they had a giant show and they made a lot of money. I mean, it was financially, it was one of the first real major live entertainments.
Right. And I think if you came of age like we did in the latter quarter of the 20th century in America, going to the circus was your introduction to the live show. You know, also you get popcorn, cotton candy, you get like a little flashlight, you get little toys from the concessions, you come home with all your props and all your stories.
Food, souvenirs.
And it's such a bonding experience between you and your parents. You and your sibling may not normally get along, but today you've gotten along. And I honestly, I just feel like the circus is the introduction to all that is good about live performance.
Well, you know, the circus existed before recording, right? Before video, before audio. So when they're putting the circus together, they are completely devoted to making a live show, right? I mean, that's if you think of the live show as a medium, the circus, they exhausted it, right? I mean, they did everything they could possibly do.
And I think that if the circus is everybody's introduction to what's great in live performance, then I think the school plays are the introduction of, in the school recital. That's kind of really our introduction to amateur performance.
Well, it's kind of funny that you bring that up because I think that probably for a lot of people, when they think of live performance, they either think of like rock bands going to music, or they think of the things done in their school, right?
Yeah,
I mean, because
and
that's
when you were a kid in school, how many times did you have to sit in assembly and you would have to watch a show of your fellow students doing something fairly mediocre? You never believed they were anyone but the person that you just had lunch with or a class with. The props were very cheesy. Everything about it, the performances were rough. And you know you weren't there because you wanted to be there. You were there because you had to be there.
yeah. So, Chris, can I tell you a little tidbit from my little story from my high school play life?
Oh yeah, please.
When I was in a high school play. Anyway,
Absolutely.
I was in the Taming of the Shrew. I was the father of the Shrew, I think.
Oh yeah, Kate's dad.
Yeah, I can't remember his name now.
Neither am I. That's why I call him Kate's dad.
But what I did the play. We did the play in high school, and that was like my first time I was ever did live well, actually, I was in the school band too, so I did live performance in school marching band. Anyway, so I'm in the play, and one day at school, and all the classes got to come and see the play like during school. They came and they let all the classes come and see it, right? And one day I'm walking down the hall, and this kid I'd never met before, he comes up to me and he says, "Oh, I loved you in Taming of the Shrew." And he was my first real fan.
Oh, that's so cool. How did that feel?
It felt really weird, man. I never thought like that would ever happen to me.
It's a nice feeling.
It was a weird feeling. I mean, I thought I mean, I didn't even think I was that good, you know. It was like it was so much work, Chris. It was so much work doing this.
Well, did your parents come? Did your mom see you?
Oh yeah, she saw it. There's a recording of it somewhere we made. Yeah, it was.
It's funny you should say that was my introduction to acting too.
Taming of the Shrew?
No, high school. I had done. Oh God, I remember. You know, I did a million school recital things where I'm a tree or I'm one of the 400 other kids dancing, but not with any coordination. But my sophomore year of high school, I got the first thing I ever went out for was The Importance of Being Earnest. I played the Reverend Canon Chasuble, who's not anyone's dad, but old enough to be someone's dad, which is always great when you're 15 years old. I was actually in the show with a legit actor who had just come from an off-Broadway production who would go on to become a major soap opera actor.
Wow.
Yeah. But
why was that? Because like he came.
I went to a prep school. I went to private school. You went to USC and I went to a private school for high school. So you and I both know the dirty little secret. But on opening night, I completely, what the actors call, went up on a line. And I said the wrong line in the wrong sequence. And I jumped ahead. And all these very important things that are supposed to happen in the third act, I completely ruined. So thank God the leading man is a man of professional stage and theater. And he totally knows what to do to get everything through to, so the audience doesn't like go, what the hell was that? But the play closes like, many minutes earlier than it's supposed to. Like even though proving there are no small roles when you want to destroy a play.
Wow.
Now, it definitely went well the next night, and I didn't make that mistake. But I definitely remember I auditioned many more times for high school plays and never once got cast again. Not once. And no one ever went up to me and said, "Hey, great job." I became a stage manager, though, and we'll talk about that a little bit later in the show because I do want to talk about the experience of not being in the audience or as a performer. But so clearly at a young age, we both have the experience of being performers and audience members. And I think that I remember, I grew up in New York City, so my mom would often for my birthday, I'd get to see a Broadway play. And that was my big thing. And surprise, surprise, I would eventually become a playwright. You know, that's how much the live experience of theater really impacted me.
Right. So
And,
you got an MFA in playwriting, is that correct?
I have a master's in theater of arts and playwriting. Yes.
So
Similar to MFA, except my grad advisor kicked me out. So very similar, but not really.
why'd they kick you out?
Because I suck, apparently.
Well, it's all subjective, Chris, in the
All
arts.
subjective. Look, he's dead, and I'm doing a podcast. So,
But you love plays. You love the live performance of the theater.
Live performance of theater really changed my life, and you know what? Because there's so many variations of this. I mean, live music changes, I think, your life. It didn't make me want to become a musician, but do you remember going to the first concert that you ever really enjoyed when you were young?
Wow, I didn't know you were going to ask me that question. Let me think about it.
I saw Joe Jackson just as I graduated high school in Madison Square Garden. I grew up in New York, so a lot of these stories take place there. I bought scalpers tickets, and God love it, we were in the fifth row center. So Madison Square Garden is not like Madison Square Garden. It's like a club. And it was Rubén Blades and Joe Jackson, June 21st, 1984. And I was a big fan of Joe Jackson. I had all the albums that had come out up to that point, which were 5 of them. He had an album out called Body and Soul. And he changed the arrangements of almost all the songs mildly, except for 1 or 2, or he made slight alterations. But he had grown up as a choral conductor. He had gone to music school.
Mm-hmm.
And it was just amazingly it was not like listening to him on the record. You know what I'm saying? There he was after 2 years, 3 years of me watching him on video, after me listening to his music. There he was right in front of me there. And there was this beautiful moment, you know, where he's there and I can see him and we're really close to each other. And I don't remember which song he's singing, but it was probably something like Steppin' Out, or Is She Really Going Out With Them? And I had heard other kids in cover bands cover him and I had listened to it, but it's coming out of his mouth and he goes up on a line and something goes off and they stop. And somebody right behind us shouts up, "Hey, Joe, you got to get your act together. This is the big leagues, Madison Square Garden." And then Joe looks and says, "I'd like to see you fuck up in front of 20,000 people." But he doesn't say it to that guy. No, he's looking directly over on my side where my best friend is at the time. And he's saying it to him because he thinks my best friend was the guy who just shouted. And he's like, "It's not me, Joe. It's not me." And that was also a pretty strange and colossal experience, because in that moment, I also realized that when you're watching live performance, you are part of the live performance.
So you feel like you're a participant. You feel like
You are 100% a participant, because it is not just live for you, it's also live for the performer. And the relationship between audience and performer is something that is so key to the live performance.
So did you feel like an emotional connection with the performer and the audience during that concert?
In that moment, I felt weird and uncomfortable, and I felt very sorry for my friend because it was clearly not his fault. But Joe doesn't know that, because when Joe looks out, and it wouldn't be until years later that I'd get on a bigger stage than my high school stage and realize that, you know, you've been on stage too. When you're on stage and you can't really see anybody, you just see like the edges of the few people, like maybe 2 or 3 rows.
You look at the audience, it's all dark because there's a bunch of lights hitting you in the face.
Yeah, and like this. And you can kind of like look down. You know, a friend of mine is a concert singer and she performs at Carnegie Hall. And I said, "What the hell is that like?" He said, "Well, Chris, it's so large and it's so bright. You can't really see a soul. You can see kind of your peripheral vision, but it's so acoustically perfect that you just hear your voice and the audience's applause, and you hear your voice go through the room and you can feel the audience. And it's more a physical sensation of being with the audience than a visual one. And I thought, man, that's a pretty cool way of looking at it. And I've never felt that way, but man, whereas I spoke to another guy who was, I saw this guy who's a violinist in, when I went and saw Bruce Hornsby. And it's this guy, he had played violin for Mumford Sons. And I said, what's it like, being on Mumford Sons? You go all over. He said, yeah, but you have to understand whether it's Bruce Hornsby or Mumford Sons. They put these little hearing aids inside your ear so you can hear yourself play. You really can't hear, except through the hearing aids, what your band members are playing. You can't really see the audience or hear the audience. So you're just kind of standing on stage in your instrument. And I thought, man, that's a pretty isolating experience, isn't that?
Well, I was thinking of 2 live shows where I kind of participated, and they're very memorable to me. Would you like to hear it?
I definitely do. Please tell me.
Okay, so this is crazy, but one of my ex-girlfriends, she did improv, and I went to one of her shows, and I was the only person in the audience. I think I was the only person in the audience, and they decided to do the show anyway, right? And it was a small theater, and it was the LA Connection, I think we're at.
Oh, yeah, I think I went to that show. Well, I went to a LA Connection improv show with you to see the woman who was your girlfriend at the time. Maybe this was not the same one.
Well, let me tell you what happened. Maybe, I don't think you were there, but maybe you were. But so they asked for a suggestion from the audience, and I said, and they were doing dramatic improv. She was trying to do dramatic improv at the time. So they're not trying to be funny, right?
Oh, then I didn't see it. I was there for that. Sorry.
Right. So they're doing a whole long form improv show. So I said, I wanted to think of something crazy. So I said, cancer. And because I wanted to challenge them, I want to see what they would do. When I give suggestions at improv shows, if I ever do, it's I try to think of something off the wall, because if they get the normal suggestions, they go into routines they've done before, I feel So, you know what? It was great, Chris. It was so amazing. Yeah. It was
improv shows are probably one of the most interesting things because you're right. They're when you go to theater, there's supposed to be a fourth wall. When you go to a concert, there is the call and response moment. But until you get to the call and response moment, there is that fourth wall. Certainly when you go to the ballet, it's all fourth wall. But when you go to an improv show, it's hey, suggested from the audience, I need a relationship, a kind of place that people can be at, and a kind of thing you might eat. We have a scene, right? This apple picking orchard sounds really good. Don't you think so, Father?
Right, and they an improv show, they will go with the audience's reaction, right? If the audience reacts to something, they'll go in that direction more.
It's very exciting being a member of an improv audience because you feel like you're kind of in control for that show.
Well, let me tell you, this show, so they did the thing. And, at the time, I don't know if you remember, but at the time there were a lot of How I Beat Cancer one-person shows, right? I mean, you remember these shows, right? Yeah. So they kind of went in that direction. I thought it was great. And at the end, I go backstage in the dressing room and I kind of overhear. I think I was waiting outside or something. I kind of overhear them talking about the show and they all hated it. I thought it was one of the best improv shows I ever saw.
No, but I would go to improv shows after work in bars and I'd thank the of them after the show. Say, hey, thank you for taking my suggestion about making it about speedboat racing, or thank you for deciding that turnip would be the national vegetable of your fake country. And it's interesting too, because you've done improv on stage.
Yeah. I went through iOS improv program.
So what is that like when you're the improviser in the audience and say, hey, I think you should all work at a mortuary and be Scandinavian U.S. ski jumpers?
Well, the interesting thing about improv is it's collaborative, right? So you're kind of, you can see it in improv. A lot of improv performers get lost in the interaction with their team.
Yeah.
and they almost forget about the audience. And you see that a lot in improv. And
so the minute you get the audience's suggestion, you're still back on the stage.
yeah, you get the audience. They get the audience's suggestion, and then they're back. They're within the bubble of their team, right?
Yeah.
And I feel like that's a mistake a lot of improv performers make. But you'll see in like really good improv performers, you'll see that they're listening to the audience and they're trying to gauge the audience's reaction, as they move through as they move through the show, and yeah, I see a lot of improv performers like kind of like literally turn their back on the audience and do their stuff, forgetting about the audience.
It's also hard. Like I remember when I started as a school teacher, I wanted to show how you could do improv in the classroom. So it's about 60 faculty members, and I pick a volunteer from the audience to improvise something with them. And it is interesting when you take a member of the studio audience and you improvise, and I've been the opposite. I've been the member of the studio audience in the improv, and it's like you're just the normal person, but now you're on the stage. Give it up for, what's your name? Larry. So, and it's pretty neat and pretty cool on both ends, I think. But it's also scary. And then, you have magic shows, which also do that, where I need a volunteer from the audience, getting on that stage for just that moment. It's very electrifying.
Yeah, another...
yeah. Go ahead. I was going to say, well, let's get back to improv, sure.
Well, I just wanted to, I had another experience of live performance I want to talk about is...
Sure, go for it.
My girlfriend knows a bunch of musicians, so we went and saw... These guys are really good, I went down and saw them. They were performing they had a normal gig at a restaurant where they just played covers.
Yeah.
And we went down there. It was at the beach somewhere, and we went down there, and I love these guys. They're really good, and they take suggestions from the audience, right?
Yeah.
And they get all the normal like silly pop songs that are current,
Yeah.
and or not current, like Just a Small Town Boy or a Girl. Yeah. What is that song?
Don't Stop Believing by Journey.
Don't Stop Believing. Of course, everybody's going to suggest that at some point, right? But I suggested these guys, you should play White Room by Cream, right?
Yeah.
And I didn't think they would do it, but they like had to stretch. They had to talk about it because I don't think any of these guys have played it ever in years or something. But they were like kind of rehearsing it for a few minutes or like a few seconds, and then they said, "All right, let's do it." And it was incredible. It was like the best cover of a song I'd ever seen. And I don't know, I really loved it, and I don't know if anybody else appreciated it.
Well, I kind of get where you're going to, because like ever since I was a kid, I remember like 78 at the Winter Garden Theater where cats would be, they had this thing called Beatlemania. And they had these four guys, they dressed them up to look like the Beatles at a interactive video light show going on. They looked like the Beatles from all the different stages. They sang like the Beatles. And I was a tremendous fan of the Beatles. And I was like, man, this is like having the Beatles here. And then I remember about 15 years ago, a friend of mine took me to see this group called the Fab Faux in New York City. And there are these guys from like Late Night with David Letterman and Conan O'Brien, Jimmy Vivino. I'm trying to think of the other guys from the band besides Jimmy Vivino. It doesn't matter. My point is, you can Google them. They look nothing like the Fab Faux, and there's more than four of them. And they're not British, any of them, but they are music geeks. So they figured out exactly in what key, what kind of instruments, what pitch, how they made their sound. So I'd catch them all the time. And they'd bring on people to do like the horns and the strings and the other stuff. So you have the studio sound of the Beatles and not just the live sound of the Beatles, which I guess they did Beatlemania too. And it was so cool. And then a couple years later, back at Madison Square Garden, I saw this band called Rain, which is more like Beatlemania again, where they look like the Beatles. They present, hey, everybody, we're great to be back at Madison Square Garden. You're like, okay. They play all of the songs really fast and edited and very slick. And the audience was totally digging it and digging it hard. But I vastly preferred the Fab Faux because I didn't really need to see the Beatles. I just wanted to hear that sound. And I do have to admit, there is something pretty awesome. I've talked about this on other episodes of hearing songs that you've only heard recorded, even if it's not by the band that does it. Just to hear it live is pretty enthralling.
Yeah, well, maybe we're getting into the weeds here, but but I think just technically speaking, like it is difficult to record music and put it on an album. I mean, I'm reminded of like all the really bad recordings of punk rock that exist. Like every punk rock band from like the major punk rock era, the recordings sound horrible, and they sound like almost like noise.
Well,
and it's because somebody just took a tape recorder and pressed record. And yeah, I mean, there's something to be said about the live experience just in technical terms. I mean, it's hard. It's really hard to capture a band's live sound, and some recording engineers have gone to great lengths to try to do that, but they probably take some shortcuts.
Also, when it's live, you're watching the sound being created in front of you in real time. You're hearing the guitar, you're seeing the drums, you're feeling the piano, you're watching the voice come out of their mouth, and it's all happening. Like a symphony is one of the most experienced experiences because the sound in the symphony is so rich and so complex, and yet it's right happening in front of you. And I know there's studies about how we can feel bass and we can feel music. It's not just something we experience in our ears, but we can pick it up through our body. And when it's immersive, whether it's a small theater, a small bar, or a large space, it's immersive. The sounds, the visuals, everything comes at you from every angle. You're present. You're present. Yeah. If you blink, you can't hit pause and rewind.
Yeah. The recording is you're not recording everything, right?
Right. People do, and it's kind of weird, and I'm guilty too. Like I just saw that I was just a year ago last night at the Hollywood Bowl watching Joshua Bell perform with the Hollywood Bowl Orchestra, and there I am recording with my camera Joshua Bell, one of the great violinists of today. But am I recording him or am I being present? And actually, this is a great segue because you and I, not only have we been performers, and I'll get to performing in a bit for myself and audience members, but we've also filmed and we have photographed performers. And that's it goes back to your saying, like, what are the challenges that you felt as someone taking photographs or videographing of, was you doing iOS?
Right, so I've worked as a professional videographer for like over 10 years. Recorded sketch comedy, stand-up plays, music, and it is weird to try to capture live performance. I mean, one thing I've found is that I don't like editing. Like I've tried to use multiple cameras and cut them together. It always feels wrong to me. Like I did a play where I cut the whole thing together from two cameras, and it just I didn't like. I mean, I thought it would have been better just to use one camera, but it just when you use one camera and there's no cuts, it just feels more like you're capturing the actual performance more, and that's what I was trying to go for in some of the projects I was recording. The sound, it's, of course, capturing the sound is very difficult. When it's a stand-up, the mic is right on their mouth, but then you want to mic the audience too. You want two mics, really. I've seen recordings of stand-up shows where they just have the stand-up's mic, and the audience is very faint, and it's funny to listen to those recordings even after having been at the show, because you know that the audience was much louder. There was much more reaction from the audience, but then you listen to the recording and the mic's not picking up any of that.
You know, it's funny you should say that. I was just thinking about the fact that Marc Maron just put out a Netflix special at REDCAT, and I was there. I'm in the first row of the audience, so go look for me. And it was interesting because they had done they were going to do two performances, and they would cull the best of those two performances. And I was at the second performance, and I remember he comes out, even before he really starts the show, he said he wasn't happy with the first audience. He was going to change things up a bit. And hell, there's even a moment like during the show where he turns around and he asks me a question, I go, but it was a 70-minute show, and I had seen the show earlier. You had too, right? It was the Dynasty Typewriter show.
Yeah, I saw that show,
right, a year prior. But what it now looked like a year later for what was it called? Apocalypse, haha, or something. And anyway, I was so excited when the show came to Netflix, and I had laughed so hard, and I started watching it on Netflix. I'm in the freaking thing, and I wasn't laughing hard. I even just kind of stopped. And I remember the same thing happened with Mike Birbiglia and the new one. I had seen that twice, and there was a recording. And same theater I saw it in New York. I had great seats for both productions. And there was something again where I'm like, I don't understand that's my question to you, really, is why is there a diminishment?
I've recorded a lot of live shows, right? And then later on, I have to look at the video and decide if it's any good, right? Decide what to do with it. Like I'm talking about editing, I think one reason the live shows are interesting to watch is because they're not edited, right? You're watching the performers react in real time. You're watching them just exist in real time. You're seeing their actual reactions, their actual pauses, their actual whatever they're doing, right? But I think a lot of people...
You can feel the heat of their bodies.
Well, in a sense...
you really can. There's a living human being standing right in front of you. Maybe they're farther away. Maybe they're not far. Maybe they're right up in your face. But they're there and you're there. And in that moment, you're sharing a space, right?
Well, what happens... Yeah. Well, what happens with a lot of editing, I think, is that they edit out the person, right? I mean, they're editing out the pauses. They're editing out their mistakes. They're editing out certain reactions that just are silly. They're editing out they're editing out a lot of stuff, that makes that person who they are. And they're trying to compress it for time, and they're trying to just have the good stuff, the good parts of the show. But without the bad stuff, without the boring stuff, it's you're not getting the full person anymore. Right?
And I'm not saying everything is bad. It's very strange, and maybe you can explain this to me. But my favorite, because I'm a solo storyteller, so one of my favorite things to do is watch. And the one that got me into solo storytelling back a long time ago was Spalding Gray's Swimming to Cambodia. And one of my favorite concert films that came out, I think, only a year or two before Swimming to Cambodia is the Talking Heads concert film, Stop Making Sense. In fact, I was not as big a fan of the Talking Heads. I liked them, but my like of them went from like to love just off of this concert movie. I did eventually see Spalding Gray in real life. And I will say Spalding Gray in real life is a more dynamic performer than Spalding Gray in the film, but the drop-off between Spalding Gray on film and Spalding Gray in real life is not precipitous. I never saw the Talking Heads in real life, so God only knows. Maybe it's certainly better to see them in real life, but everyone says that Stop Making Sense is a great film. But both of them were filmed by Jonathan Demme.
Well,
and you've seen the film, so right? What is it that he's making as a choice?
Well, you tell me, but you tell me what you think. But I think that one thing he does with both of those is lack of editing, right? Is exactly what I'm talking about.
And the cameras are on stage too; they're at eye level.
Well, the closer the camera is, the more intimate it feels. That's correct. I mean, Yeah, I mean, you want to get close. You know, you want to fill the screen with the performer. But yeah, but when you start editing a live performance, you're editing out everything that makes it a live performance, right? I mean, it's not a live performance. Once you start editing out anything, it's not a live performance anymore. I mean, I have tried to take live performances and cut them to be, I don't know, shorter or be more interesting or whatever, and it takes all the life out of them. You know,
It
I mean,
makes a lot of sense. It makes a lot of sense. I mean, the closest I've seen since then, last year for a month, I had a Samsung Galaxy, so I had VR goggles. And I was watching, back then I had Oculus, and Oculus has some free concert footage that was filmed just for the Oculus. So the cameras are on eye level. There is no cuts. There's no cuts. You know what I'm saying? It's a 360 camera, so nothing ever cuts away. So you're just in the club or on the stage with the band or the singer, and you're also in the audience with the people in the audience, or you're backstage or wherever they place you. And it does do a pretty good job of replicating that immersive quality that you just talked about.
well, you're not cutting ever.
Yeah.
You're there with the performers the whole time. You get the full performer. You know, if they cough or they pause, you get that. I mean, you know, there's a subconscious thing. You know, editing is not perfect. You know, when editors go in and they're cutting stuff together, you know, they have to make a lot of subjective choices about what they want in the final product. And you know, there might be things that they miss. You know, there might be little subconscious things that would be better to keep in. You know, but they're not consciously realizing it, and they're cutting it out.
And then another thing that's not really ever conveyed by any documentary, maybe the Woodstock film, but very few, is what it's like to be, and I guess now we're really talking about, I'll say comedy clubs, theater, and music events, that when you go to these particular live events, you're with what I would call your tribe. These are your like-minded people. You know, like I've often gone to all of these events we just listed alone, and I'm sitting next to someone else, and I'll say, so are you a big fan of this musician? Are you a big fan of this playwright? Are you a big fan of this improv team? Do you do improv? Do you do storytelling? And often you will find in this audience of people, like-minded people that you might not find anywhere else.
Yeah, you know, that reminds me of this girl I used to be friends with years ago. She told me that the best way to seduce a woman is talk about the music you like. And if you both have a love of the same music, then it's much easier to.
Well, that's certainly true. I mean, and God knows there is nothing more romantic, and I've been very fortunate to do this, to go to see theater and solo performers and concerts with women that I have been on a date with. In fact, 2 years ago, I went with a friend to see the same I just mentioned, Joshua Bell. She had never been to the Hollywood Bowl before. So we did a picnic. We went through the museum. I told her about the history. We moved our seats a little closer. We had some wine. The lights went down. We were outside over the beautiful Hollywood Hills. This incredibly romantic Spanish classical guitar was starting to play. And we now always call that our unofficial first date, because there was something about the beauty of this moment under the stars with this music, with all of this around us, that creates magic. And I think maybe one of the things that you'll never, ever, ever see, no matter how hard you work on recording or filming or transcribing, is there is a magic that you share with everybody in the audience when you're at a live event.
Right. It's a sense that you're all unified, right? You're all you all have something in common.
Yeah. And it's a weird deal because, you know, the cynic in me always wants to say, look, man, how far you sit in the theater or in the arena determines the quality of your experience. And I do think it's very cruel and unfair how expensive sometimes the good seats are and how crappy the cheap seats are. And I do feel it, that's like a criticism of America there.
Well, I do remember going, I can't remember, I think it was at the Hollywood Bowl, and they have like these orchestra seats where these people stand up and they're right there with the,
they're being served food. They have dining tables and wait service. Like lords and ladies.
And they're right there with the band, and, they could shake the band's hand and everything. And, when you're way back in the back, you're watching them and you see that they're having way more fun than you are. But,
you're not even watching them. You're watching the Jumbotron, right?
You're watching them and the Jumbotron. But yeah,
like going like this, right?
Yeah. But,
looking up at the big Jumbotron.
The thing is in a way, it's not bad. I mean, at least somebody's having a lot of fun. You see that they're a fan too, and you feel a certain camaraderie with them. It's a good feeling. I mean, but yeah, I mean, do you feel bad that they got to afford those seats and you couldn't? I mean, I don't know, maybe. I mean, there's some performers.
If the show is really good, right, you're going to overlook it.
Well, their enthusiasm for something you like too, it doesn't feel bad. I mean, you're all coming together, you're all enjoying the same thing. I mean, maybe that's maybe that's how we get past class differences, and we just pretend to.
Is that we all sit there, and also again, I'm a storyteller, and I've been performing for the last 5 years, and my last show was, I think, the very last week of February 2020. And I was actually a performance with people who were visually impaired. So, which is an interesting choice. But I have certainly, and you've had this experience as a performer where you may not see the audience, but you feel the audience. And sometimes as a performer, I really feel like the audience is with me and something is happening and it's wonderful. And then there's been other times where I'm like, fuck the audience. They don't get me. Fuck them, fuck them, fuck them. I used to do Moth, and I get, this is a goddamn fucking score. Or, this is the amount of applause, And then there's other times, too. I'm a host. So sometimes, like, a performer will go out there, and I'll be like, yeah, they brought it home. Or, oh, Jesus, they stunk up the place, and I got to clean up the room before I introduce the next person. And I definitely have, like, you've developed an eye for the performer. I feel like I've developed an ear for the audience/performer relationship.
Well, we talked about this beforehand a little bit, but we didn't bring up this subject. But this is something I felt for years, is like, there's a certain mind reading or telepathy you get as a performer where you start imagining that you know what the audience is feeling and thinking. and I don't know if it's fake or real, right? But you know what I'm talking about. After a certain amount of time.
You're right. And every performer I know will say that.
You start to think you know what they're feeling.
Well, you want to, because you want to be connected. Like, stand-ups are the most notorious for doing crowd work, and I've been on the receiving end of it, and I've also been on the giving end of it as a host. And, if they're friendly to you, it's great. And then look, hey, how's everybody doing tonight? Yeah, hey, where are you from? Nice. Your anniversary. Give it up for 30 years of love. But then, like, Sebastian Mancuso looks at me and goes, you look like you didn't think you were going to a comedy show. And I'm like, geez, really? You, Mr. Sebastian Mancuso, is going to sell out Madison Square Garden. You got to fucking insult me because I'm not laughing at you because you're not fucking funny, right? But on the other hand, I did a show just before COVID, and my girlfriend was like, and I'm like, I lost this contest show I was on. And I was like, it's okay, because I could tell that the audience was not with me. Not that they were a bad audience, just that where they were coming from, and we didn't connect. You know what I'm saying? We didn't connect.
Well, you felt that way, but you don't know for sure if that's the case.
Well, I kind of know when I get off the stage. I've definitely remember the great thrill. I did a show in New York City in December. I had some friends come, and now I just totally am bragging, but it's for context. But people came up afterwards to talk about my story so much that I couldn't even really be there. I had to leave with my buddies, and I couldn't get to my buddies because everybody kept on saying, hey, that really affected me. Hey, that really affected me. It was about turning 50. And everybody in the audience who had been over 50 was like, yeah. And it was kind of wonderful on one hand to get up on a stage and just share your truth with a bunch of strangers. And when it's over, you're no longer a stranger to them. And I try very hard when people come up to me to be very grateful. Have you ever gone up to a performer after a show and told them how much you like their performance?
You know what, Chris? I'm sure I have, but I can't remember a specific instance where I did it right now.
Well, when you worked a show, I know you worked a show with Robin Williams once. What was that like?
Well, I was just a photographer for the show.
Did you talk to him at all?
I just said hi after the show backstage. That's all.
Did he say hi back?
Yeah. He was a very nice guy. He's very shy, actually. On stage, he's a wild man. Dominates the stage. I mean, he dominated the stage. It was hard to get anything in edgewise with him on stage, during an improv show. The other performers most celebrity improv artists, they don't want to go too far. They don't want to accidentally say something that'll kill their career or something. But Robin Williams, no, it's the Robin Williams show once he started doing improv, and but backstage, totally shy.
It is weird when you meet those actors backstage or after the show, and the ones that you can tell are proper extroverts and the ones that you can tell are proper introverts. And, years ago, like 20 years ago, I was selling women's shoes at Macy's, and Angela Lansbury came in. We got to talking, and I told her that I had seen her, 20 years prior to that, in Sweeney Todd in 1979 when I was 13, and how much it changed my life. And she spent, I'm not making this, 15 minutes talking to me about every detail of working with Sondheim, of working with the director, working with the different actors, what each performance was like, how she was always afraid she was going to get smacked by the rolling stage every night. And she talked about it like an athlete talks about their favorite game 15 years after they've played that game. And I could tell that and people were coming up to her, go, oh, hey, Angela, sorry, I love you in Murder, She Wrote. And she just didn't, no offense, but she just did not give a shit about Murder, She Wrote. Yeah. Like, okay, nice paycheck. Thank you very much. But you want to talk to me about being on stage, I will talk to you. And anytime now I run into an actor who I have seen on stage, I will ask them about seeing them on stage, because I know that if I do that, they'll stop what they're doing and they will actually have a conversation with me, because they'll understand that live performance is such an intimate relationship. It's so intimate that they know that they shared something with you and you shared something with them.
So you said that performance changed your life. How do you think it changed your life?
Oh, it made me want to get into theater because there was so much going on. It was, again, like the circus. There was horror, there were organs, there were clowns, there was 3 rings, which were 3 stages, there was music, there was everything about it is very circus-like. In fact, Angela Lansbury had as much pancake makeup on as a evil clown, as Mrs. Lovett. Sweeney
what was
Todd
the show
is about
called?
A barber. Sweeney Todd, the demon barber of Fleet Street, about a barber in the 19th century London who kills his customers. Then his downstairs lady, Mrs. Lovett, makes them into meat pies. It was a perfect thing to see when you're 13 years old.
So it was
the world's best musical.
It was
made into a movie.
Right.
With Johnny Depp.
It was an all-encompassing experience for you.
Total theater, total experience, and good seats and live. And I think what I'm noticing now, because you and I both have a lot of friends who are performers and we're performers, is that I hear friends I know I miss. Like I was in out by a park this weekend, and I heard a guy on guitar playing some Beatles songs, and I just stopped. And I stopped like I would never stop before because I had so missed the sound of a human being just playing on an acoustic guitar. And on the other hand, when I talked to my girlfriend about it, because we're both performers, oh my God, I so miss getting up on a live stage and performing. This background here is from Stories LA. It's a backyard, and it's a photograph cropped of a place that I would perform at least once a month, 6 times to 12 times a year. And not having that ability to just get up and have rapport with an audience, or sit in the audience and watch my fellow peers work through a story or work through their greatness, or hear a play or a comic or any of that, it hurts on a very deep level. I don't want to depress you guys. I want to get out on a good one. So I guess the question I have to you, Randall, is what makes this experience so special and unique?
Well, I've been thinking about this now for the entire time we've been talking, and I didn't think of this before we started, but now I'm starting to think, there's something about going to see your favorite artist or a good artist that you don't know about. Just see them unmediated, without anything, any kind of medium between you, any kind of like, you see them as a person, you see them as a real person. It's just, you just understand them better, right? I mean, you understand them better as a person. I mean, I know, like, Marc Maron is an interesting guy, right? You listen to his podcast. You watch him on Glow or something, but you go to see one of his shows and you get the full Marc Maron, right? The actual guy, and
he is sweating in front of you.
And trust me, getting the full Marc Maron is totally different than getting him on this podcast. You'd agree with that, right? Right,
Oh,
Chris?
100%. I mean, you're yeah. And I will certainly say I saw a Little Night Music with Elaine Stritch on Broadway about 10 years ago when she was alive. And she's doing this song called Liaisons, Whatever Happened. And she plays this woman who had been she had many lovers in her life. She is now at the end of her life. She's going to die at the end of this scene after she finishes this song. And at the very beginning, as she's recounting her lovers, she stops what she's doing. She tells the orchestra to stop, and she shouts, "Is there a doctor in the house?" Because somebody has passed out in front of her, and she can see that. And we stop the show. They escort the woman out. And then she apologizes to the audience and said, well, the next line I'm going to say is very inappropriate. And she genuflects. And then she talks about her lover who died in front of her. And then I remember the end of the show. Bernadette Peters plays her daughter. That's a very weird casting. At the end of the show, they come on stage and she gives that look like, and it's that very weird thing when you realize, in a live performance, shit can go sideways. But I also want to say, I had a friend who did wardrobe for high school plays out here in Los Angeles, and we would go to these high school plays, which were not superlative. They were real amateur theater in the best sense of that word, and I would still enjoy an amateur performance. I have to say, even the most mediocre productions, even the most mediocre music, not so much the most mediocre comedy or the most mediocre improv, but my standard for what I like in the world of art when it's live is so much lower. I don't need to ever see the best. I'd like seeing the best, but sometimes just seeing the most mediocre live trumps seeing the best recorded. And that's just because I feel like you're watching magic in real time. And I guess what makes it unique and special for me is it's magic in real time.
I feel like you're getting like a real sense of who the performer is, and you're getting much more of their full personality in a live show. I mean, I think that's part of why it becomes interesting, much more interesting than a recording.
I agree. I think so. And also I think even if it's just an interpreter of the music, with a violinist playing Bach, there's something that Bach put into Bach's music that comes up to life when you hear it. And even when an improviser takes a suggestion, or when a comic tells a joke, or where a ballet dancer executes a flawless move of a Stravinsky, of an opera, or an opera, an aria, any of these things that were created to be shown, when they're shown in front of your face, is transcendent. So thank you for much. Oh, I'm sorry. You have I give you the last word as always, please.
Well, I guess I just wanted to say that, one of the things that disappoints when you go to a live show, if it's too rehearsed and too put together, right? If you feel like, I mean, this is my experience. You just feel like the performers are too hidden inside the show, the slickness of the show. I mean, one thing, like you talked about, you'd rather go to a small theater, right? Than see
It
somebody.
depends. I like small and big. I like all sizes of theater. I just feel that in a small theater, you get an intimacy that it can be quite compelling.
Right.
A large theater can be quite wonderful too, if the scope of the work merits it. I love Lincoln Center. I love a big, big stage if there's going to be dancers or chorus or something to fill up that space.
Right. Well, I just think in a live show, you don't want to totally bury the performers in like a completely slick production. I mean, I think that can hurt sometimes, the live experience.
Look, I'm not saying that all good, I'm not saying that there can't be bad live experience. I'm just saying the live experience as an experience is unique and exceptional. And when you see a bad show, all it's done is it's failed to live up to the potential of what live performance offers. And that's the fault. Isn't that it was that live performance sucks? It's that these people, whatever their failings, didn't take full advantage of the fact that live performance can be transcendent. They didn't get to the space that they wanted to get to or should have gotten to. But hey, originally you said you were not a big fan of live performance. So let me end this. Let me end this episode by asking, do you still feel that same way?
Well, it's funny because in this discussion, I've really just remembered back of very memorable live shows I've seen. And some of them have been just wonderful experiences, I got to admit.
Okay, well, that's good enough for me. I'm Chris.
I'm Randall.
Don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment. And until then, all the best and be well.